It must be his time.
Wouldn't interrupt you tonight. You
Oh.
have 30
Yeah,
seconds.
5:59.
Yeah.
Okay,
It just turned 6.
it did.
on this
Okay,
computer, yeah.
okay, good timing. It being 6 o'clock, I'll call to order the June 9th meeting of the planning board here at Whitcomb Hall. I'll begin with the roll call. Scott Self, that's me, I'm present. Michael York.
Here.
Jane Johnson,
Here.
Michael Day, Brandon Sell,
Here.
Richard Lane,
Here.
Selectmen's Rep Bill Hutwelker, Steve Malone, alternate, and Lily Gallagher, alternate. All right, and having a quorum, I'll proceed with the agenda. The agenda this evening are applications and public hearings. We have a planning board number 22-011, and that's a boundary line adjustment. James Fippert of Brickstone Land Use Consultants LLC requests a boundary line adjustment for a transfer of land area between properties owned by Naughty Pine Antiques and John Pappas located at 787 West Swansea Road and Cobble Hill Road respectively. The subject properties are shown at tax map 72 lot 93 and tax map 71 lot 17 and are located in the business district. Upon a finding that the application meets the submission requirements, the board will vote to accept the application as complete. Any public hearing may follow immediately or will be scheduled for a time and date certain. Next item, planning board number 22-010, multi-tenant application and preliminary conceptual consultation. The town of Swansea, on behalf of Honeybee Hollow Child Care Center, requests to operate a child care center at the Carpenter home located at 1 Simonue Lane. Subject property is shown at tax map 13 lot 20-1 in the residence district. So in this one, we'll have the I think that's what Mike is probably here for. We'll have the preliminary conceptual consultation first, and then we'll have the application and whether it's complete or not, and then decide whether the application is complete and to go to public hearing if we do that. Okay, so next item C would be master plan adoption. And the master plan is update is ready for adoption as provided in RSA 6744. The master plan is adopted by the planning board after a duly noticed public hearing and discussions and other business site plan review regulations and other business as may be required. And then adjournment. First, we need a regional impact vote. If anything on the agenda requires us to notify surrounding towns.
I'll move there's nothing on the agenda to notify the surrounding towns.
Motion by Michael York that we do not need to notify surrounding towns under the regional impact. Is there a second?
Also.
Seconded by Brandon. Is there any further discussion? Then all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed. And we will move on to our minutes. We need to review the minutes of May 26, 2022. Is there anyone that has anything, additions or anything to say about the minutes of the last meeting? If not, a motion is in order to accept them as presented. Richard, make that motion. Motion by Richard to accept the minutes as presented. Is there any further, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jane. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we've accepted the minutes. Now we move on to our first public hearing, which is the planning board 22-011. It's the boundary line adjustment. James Fippert of Brickstone Land Use Consultants is requested boundary line adjustment for a transfer of land area between properties owned by Naughty Pine Antiques and John Pappas. And that's located at 787 West Swansea Road and Cobble Hill Road respectively. And the subject properties are shown at tax map 72 lot 93 and tax map 71 lot 17. And they are located in the business district. And I will open the public hearing, and Mr. Fippert would like to make our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Fippert. I'm here representing John Pappas and Naughty Pine Antiques, the owners of the 2 parcels of land that would be affected by the boundary line adjustment. Naughty Pine Antiques, you all know that property. The building burned down a few years ago, and it's been replaced with storage buildings that are now in place on that property today. John Pappas subsequently purchased this tract of land from the town of Swansea which is adjoining at the rear of the Naughty Pine property. And he wishes to make a boundary line adjustment and take a portion of this property and adding it to the existing Naughty Pine. So if you'd like, I'll go through the checklist and you can vote on completeness unless staff has already done that, but.
No, the board has to vote on that, so we have just what you added into the application, we'll vote on that.
Okay, I'll just work right down the checklist,
Yep,
and this is
that'd
your
be
plat
perfect.
submission checklist.
Yep.
Number one is the proposed subdivision name or title, which is on the plans. The name and address of the owner, which is Naughty Pine Antiques and John Pappas. They also appear on the plan and on the abutter list. The scale calls for a scale of 1 inch is 30 feet. This is a 75 scale because the 30 scale wouldn't fit on a plan sheet of normal size. A north arrow appears on each plan sheet. There's a locus plan locating its presence in the town of Swansea. David Mann is the licensed land surveyor, and his stamp appears on the plan. Bearings and distances are included on all the boundary lines. And the statement providing that it meets the closure requirements appears on the plan as well. Number 8, we're requesting a waiver. This involves the location and profiles, elevations of existing water mains, sewer mains, blah, blah, blah. This is just a boundary line adjustment, and utilities are not involved in any manner, not affected. So I'm asking for a waiver from submitting that. Number 9, existing and proposed easements, right-of-ways, buildings, water courses, ponds, standing water, ledge, stone walls, and other essential site features. The existing buildings appear on the plan. There are wetlands areas on the property. The rear property that was purchased from the town, those areas appear here. And this used to be a pond which DOT drained, losing one of your fire ponds. And it's now just a stream that passes through this property and under 10. Number 10, the location of property lines. Obviously that appears. I've highlighted them with a pink highlighter to make it easier for you to see where the property lines are. The dashed lines represent the changes. This is a line that would be eliminated between the existing Naughty Pine lot and the John Pappas lot. This would be a new line being added, forming the enlarged Naughty Pine property. The tax map number appears on each of the plan sheets. The existing and proposed topographic contours. We're not proposing any changes in topography. This is just a lot line adjustment. This is LiDAR topography that was obtained from the New Hampshire Granite website. It's 1-foot contours, which is why it's so busy looking and difficult to read. That's why I put it on a separate plan sheet. It makes it a lot easier to see what we're doing with the lot lines. Number 13, location of groundwater. We're requesting a waiver. Again, we're not doing anything on the property yet. That information is not necessary. 14, perk tests and test results aren't necessary for a lot line adjustment, so we're requesting a waiver from that requirement. 15, soil mapping type, slopes and boundaries. I'm requesting a waiver. Because again, we're not changing topography, we're not building anything yet, so that information really isn't necessary. Number 16, deed restrictions, we're requesting a waiver. There are no restrictions that are required or are desired and would not appear in the revised deeds. 17, open space to be preserved. We're not putting on any conservation easements or preserving any open space. And again, there is no development being proposed. Number 18, existing buildings and other man-made structures to remain. These are shown here. 19, existing and proposed streets. Route 10 is at the bottom of the page, Cobble Hill Road. These are both existing public rights of way, not affected and not changed by this proposal. Number 20, final road profiles and cross sections. We're requesting a waiver. We're not building any roads. Number 21, drainage erosion control plans approved by the Cheshire County Conservation District if applicable. It's not applicable because we're not changing anything on the property. Number 22, state subdivision approval, which is septic approval. We're requesting a waiver. We're not building any septic systems, we're not building any houses. And number 23 is state highway municipal access permit, and none is necessary, so that's not applicable. So we're requesting a waiver for 10 items on the checklist, and I listed them separately in the letter with the application that I submitted to you. And it's either information that's not applicable, that doesn't exist at the site, or is not being affected by the proposed boundary line adjustment.
Okay,
So I would ask you to
Yep.
find the plan and application complete.
thank you. All right, before we get started, I just want to notice that I erred when I opened up the public hearing before he got done presenting us with the application. I shouldn't have done that. So public hearing is not open yet. We're going to see if the application is complete. Then we'll open up a public hearing. So I'm taking that one back. So anyways, it looks to me anyways, like he has everything on there. It's a pretty simple one. He's asking for waivers of number 8, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 20, 21, 22, and 23, because they don't apply to this simple lot line adjustment. And yes, Sarah.
I might interject here, not to suggest it's not complete. Mr. Fickard submitted the subdivision application first, and that whole list goes to the subdivision. And then he resubmitted the boundary line adjustment application, which does not require any of that. Which is why your packets don't reflect the long list that Mr. Fickard just read off.
Okay, run that by again. There's a subdivision.
We have a subdivision application and we have a
But
boundary line
this isn't,
adjustment
right?
application. This is just a boundary line adjustment application.
Where's the subdivision one come in then? It's
It
not on
doesn't.
tonight's agenda, correct?
It does not come in. It was missubmitted at the beginning of the process.
Oh, okay, so he's not.
So
gonna be
Mr.
coming back
Fickard-
this-
I used the wrong
Resubmitted.
form,
Yeah, oh,
It's
okay, yeah.
okay.
and I wasn't aware the town had a separate form for boundary line
I
adjustment.
thought it was a little long, for a boundary line adjustment that when you're going on, but yeah, I was glad to have more information than
I
not.
thought it was
not-
very thorough.
Yeah. Okay. So, in this very thorough application for a boundary line adjustment, does anyone think that the application is not complete? I don't think so. So a motion would be in order to accept the application as complete and to move on to public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Michael York,
Second.
that the application is complete, ready to move on to public hearing, seconded by Brandon. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. All those opposed? And, okay, the application is complete. Now I'm gonna seat Steve Malone for, let's see, who's on the list here? Oh, or for Michael Day. Okay. Okay, now I will open up the public hearing officially this time. So, and again, you've pretty much made your presentation. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Not really. I mean, both properties are in the business
Yep.
district. No new lots will be created with a lot line adjustment. Both lots are conforming to your dimensional requirements and frontage requirements. So this doesn't create any nonconformities that I'm aware of.
Was there any particular reason that he wanted to do that?
Yes, I'll be coming in another month or two with a site plan to expand the storage units onto this area.
Oh, yeah, okay, so that makes sense.
We had planned for it. The discussion was ongoing for over a year to purchase that property. So we had done a conceptual plan for him to determine the area he needed.
Yeah.
You can see where the curb cut is on Route 10. And there's a gap between these buildings. That'll be the driveway access into this area.
Good, that's dry enough up in there then?
It's all been filled and previously, so it's, yeah. It's
It's just
all,
about the last bit of usable.
right.
Of that whole 14 acres, that's really,
That's why I asked,
it's
yeah.
pretty much almost all it's actually usable. The rest of it's,
Yeah.
the rest of it has intrinsic values, but not actually any commercial value.
Okay, I was just curious as to why.
I've expressed concern to the applicant previously, and I'll do it from the board side too. The Hollow Hill entrance that sometimes gets used was not supposed to be getting used on previous approvals. And I'm gonna ask as a condition of this, the board consider making sure that that does not get used and that it gets filled in.
That, and you just pointed that out, correct? That entrance from Colorado
That's the
Hill? That's what you just
location.
pointed on?
Right. You may recall
Okay.
that
So,
couple of years ago, we requested the former Winchester Road.
Yep.
Discontinued by the
Mhm.
town. And they voted at town meeting to do that. So that roadway existed here. Between these properties and connected back to where Route 10 is today, this location. So that road has been discontinued. And this land area has been split. Half went to the adjacent landowners.
Okay.
Both the north and or east and west sides. So that curb cut existed many, many years ago when Winchester Road was there. That's why it's there. It wasn't constructed by Naughty Pine Antiques. I talked to John Pappas about it because Mike made me aware that he had that concern. And John wants to actually file for a driveway permit and leave it open. It's an access now to the dumpster, which is located here behind this first building. And he felt that's a much safer access in than trying to get them in and around the building from Route 10. But we'll let that play out through the
Well, I
driveway.
would tend to agree, but I just want to put part of the record that originally when that was done, it wasn't to be used. It's been being used. It's irritating the neighbors. So if he's gonna open it back up, then yeah, that's the way to do it, and we can do it that way. But right now, it's not to be used. I understand this point, I do. But we made the decision that the board made when they made it, and it's my job to make sure that it gets enforced.
okay, are there any other questions for the applicant? I think that driveway issue that the code enforcement officer mentioned is probably better addressed when they come in for that site plan. That would be part of a site plan for that, if it's all the same to you. Yeah, okay, so we'll address that then when they come in. And if there are no other questions for the applicant, and there's no one from the public here for it, then I will close the public hearing. And we can have a vote on the lot line adjustment. Anything to discuss? Anything about it?
I'll make a motion that we accept the lot adjustment.
Okay, motion by Michael York to approve the lot line adjustment. Is there a second?
Can I ask one question before we get to that point?
Yep.
We have the same owner for both properties, only under different titles, right?
I'm sorry?
We have the same owner under, for both properties, only separate names, only separate.
The separate parcels. They are, yeah.
Yeah,
Wait, but Naughty Pine is no longer the owner. It's Pappas.
no, United Pine is Pappas, and it's
Well,
same,
that's what I'm trying to get.
yeah, same.
It's the same person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The motion should really be seconded before discussion is then.
Oh,
occurred.
absolutely. You're absolutely correct. Yes.
So, no, for Mr. Lane's edification, that's the only reason I
Yep.
bring it up.
Thank you. Would you like to second that motion? The motion by Michael York is to,
I'll second.
okay, is to approve the lot line adjustment, and seconded by Richard Lane. And we already had the discussion, Richard. And do you have anything else on that? No? Anybody else for discussion? Then all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And you have the lot line adjustment, and maybe we'll be
Thank you.
seeing you in a while for the site plan then.
I'll see you in a month or two.
Next item up is the planning board number 22-010. That's for the multi-tenant application and preliminary conceptual consultation. And they're looking for a conceptual consultation on that property before we discuss it. So that isn't part of the public hearing, is why I separated those two issues when I was talking about the agenda before. We don't require a public hearing for the conceptual part of it there, and nothing the board and stuff members say are binding for the conceptual part of it. In the public hearing, they are. So you're up for the conceptual part.
For the conceptual,
Yep.
excellent. So conceptually, this building's already here. I think most everybody knows where it is, but if you don't, let me point it out. This Old Homestead Highway right about here is Town Hall. This is now a rotary. This is an old survey, as you can see. And then you go up Seminole Lane, which is just this one road that dies right about in this spot as drawn. And that's the old Carpenter home. So most of you probably even been up there at one point or another for different reasons. And we are working with Ms. Alice Romanek, who suffered a great surprise about a month ago, a little bit less, when we've been talking about opening up a childcare facility with her probably since almost 9 months ago, as of last Old Home Day, actually, when Alice came to me and said, what do you think? And we were getting ready. We thought we had about a month out when her insurance company informed her that her current location on Ash Hill, at Doc Lyman's old place, will no longer be covered by her insurance, and that no one else was going to insure her either. So we all had to get our bumming gear. Sometimes those things actually are helpful. I think we both, I know I certainly needed to get my bumming gear on this. So we got moving a little bit quicker than we would have. Most of you also already know that the Carpenter Home property, which included all of this, including the little bit that's hashed out here, was all one parcel. And the voters agreed to both subdivide this and purchase Mount Caesar. Now it's all town property. And when we subdivided it, the only thing that was left was the Carpenter Home and this 3 acres here. So basically, as you can see, follows the stone wall all the way up to this stone wall, crosses over, and then goes all the way down through, catches up at Sawyer's Crossing Road, and then back again. It's a little over 3 acres here, 3.01 acres goes with this now. And the town has since also dissolved the trust with the state's encouragement and help to do so. So we set out to figure out what to put there, and here we are.
Just a moment, Mike,
Let me
Beverly.
ask a question,
Mhm.
Mike. So there's no parking as a facility or area associated with the 3 acre parcel? Is that what you're saying?
No. There's no parking for her customers. This is going to be where, largely where the staff will park. They can also park up here. Most of the customers will be parking here at this time.
But that's not part of that 3 acre parcel that's been set
That's right.
aside.
That's right. As is the parking in front of Town Hall belongs to the state of New Hampshire. So it's part of the deal, however, because it is Seminole Lane, and it is actually a Class 5 road. We will be maintaining it, and we will be maintaining the parking area as well. And of course, this road, as you also know, continues out here to the cemetery and then exits by the Grange. And what we're going to be asking people to do, we worked with the police department, is her customers will be coming in here, they'll be dropping off their kiddos and then heading out this way to relieve some of the congestion and the confusion that may occur at the Rotary. And so far, so good. Everybody's been behaving. We've been very glad about that. And we got to get together and figure out what we're going to name this road, because it remains unnamed, and we'll work on that. So I looked through the site plan regs as one would and should when doing what I'm about to do here. And the purpose, it starts out with the purpose, which is really good. As I'm going to run through this as fast as I can, because I know how these things can go. So the purpose of these site plan review regulations is to provide for the safe and attractive development of the town of Swansea, and to guard against such conditions as would involve danger or injury to health, safety, or prosperity by reason of. And I'll go through some of the reasons. We all know what this building is. We all know where it is, and we all know what it's always done up to now. Inadequate drainage or conditions conducive to flooding of the property, or that never's been an issue. Inadequate protection for the quality of groundwater, not an issue. Undesirable or preventable elements of pollution such as noise, glare, smoke, soot, particulate, or any other discharge. She's going to be doing some really interesting things with these kids, but none of them are going to create any of those things. Inadequate provisions for fire safety, prevention and control. As we all know, it's got a brand new state-of-the-art sprinkler system. Harmonious and aesthetically in keeping with its environs. It's always been there, and it's been there actually prior to many of its environs, actually. Proper arrangement and coordination of streets, covered that. Access for firing apparatus and equipment and other emergency vehicles to buildings to be coordinated as to compose a convenient system. Worked with the fire department on this thing for 8 years for all the different purposes in the past. They're good, as are the police, with the current arrangement. To assure that the capacity of existing facilities such as schools, emergency services, roadways, solid waste disposal systems, water supply, surface water drainage systems, and other municipal services are not exceeded. This isn't going to put an imposition on any of those services. It doesn't even get most of them. To provide for adequate snow removal and snow storage, as we've always done, and provide for safe and adequate pedestrian access to all buildings, as we will do. I think part of that is going to be, and one of the things that I find exciting about this on like pretty much every level, actually, though, is because of this roadway and the way it is, And because we have the potash bowl, the plan is to bring kids to the library pretty routinely, which is pretty awesome. Town hall, fire station, and all those wonderful opportunities. And because the Monadnock school system continues to cut back on before and after care programs, I think Ms. Alice is going to be filling an even larger gap than previously. So it's relative proximity to all of those things make it pretty ideal. And I'm going to finish up here with scope of review, and then if you've got any more questions or anything like that, then we'll move from there. This is a little bit lengthy, but if you'll indulge me, I appreciate it. Scope of review. Whenever any development or change or expansion of use of a site governed by these regulations is proposed, or whatever any changes are proposed which differ from an existing site plan as previously approved by the planning board. And two, if you read these, there's not a lot of periods in them, by the way. That's just not me going over them. Two, before any construction, land clearing, building, development, or change is begun. We're not doing that. Before any permit for the erection of any building or authorization for development on such site shall be granted, the owner of the property or his agent shall apply for secure from planning board approval of such proposed site development in accordance with procedures outlined in this regulation. The planning board, not doing that. The planning board shall have the responsibility for making the final decision as to the necessity of site plan review. The planning board shall have the responsibility for making the final decision as to the necessity of site plan review. That was on purpose. Where there is any doubt as to whether or not a project requires site plan review, the affected party should request a determination from the board. In an effort to clarify that constitutes a change of use of sufficient magnitude or impact to trigger planning board action. If any change of use or expansion involves significant impact in terms of traffic, circulation, parking, or lighting, for example, a change from an attorney's office to an accountant's office would probably not involve significant impact. I would editorialize here, assisted living to childcare would be an analog to that. But a change from bed and breakfast to a restaurant would. Still a little squishy. So I would say is if the board saw fit that this goes through site plan review, I would ask their indulgence for a couple, 2-3 months, because Alice is going to get her nonprofit status finished. With that nonprofit status will be a likely expansion, not outside the footprint necessarily, but there's some more walls to come down. There's plenty of room in this building that she's not using yet. And with that may be the additional parking that one would need, which may exceed the 200 square feet per your site plan regulations. I don't see another building or anything like that. But I think if there's going to be changes, they're not happening now. And we don't know enough to know that they are going to happen quite yet. Because to be honest with you, in the 9 months I've watched this and worked with Alice on this, it's been a bit of a tilt-a-whirl. And things don't go as fast in the way you think they're always going to. So I would at least ask if you want site plan review, which I totally understand and respect, that we wait until we have a little bit more to actually review. And the time to prepare a plan, it's more reflective of that change. Questions?
There's not gonna be problems with her insurance adopting this building once you get it squared.
Our insurance?
No, her insurance, she got to carry insurance herself.
She does. That's taken care of through licensing. Licensing double checks all that good stuff.
Yeah, 'cause you
We've
don't-
met with the licensing people up there now 3 times.
Yeah.
And I know we all had a little bit of fun at the expense of our friends at the state. My experience has always been very positive with almost every division, quite frankly.
Yeah.
No more positive than these folks.
Okay.
They are her biggest cheerleader right now is licensing.
I was gonna say, the issue was with my homeowner's insurance, because I was a licensed center in my home, and they weren't carrying, the homeowners was no longer carrying a policy for childcare in the home. I have separate childcare insurance that I purchased through a different company. So I have that insurance up there.
Thank you for following. I totally forgot that I started with because she's got booted because of
It's
insurance.
okay.
Okay, there we go.
So are you proposing this as governmental use or not? Because you were citing that RSA, or somewhere in our papers, the RSA is on there.
Well, she's gonna be private nonprofit, which to me, it's not an analog to government, but that's where we were at that time in history, was as that. But again, I've got no problem doing it. We just don't know where we are yet with, to to get quality feedback from you, I need to give you quality information. In order to get quality information, I need a little bit more reassurance that we're gonna be able to do what we think we're gonna be able to do in the coming months, and then spend those monies to get that information.
And in a nutshell, what is that you want to do within the next coming months?
In a nutshell, we want to open up some of the areas inside the building, which will make more room for more students, which will give us a couple more staff members and a couple more trips up and down the hill every day. Which you may want to know more about the parking and things like that. We may want to know more about the parking. We may get rid of a lot of what's in the front of the structure and turn that into nose-in parking. I don't think we're going to be doing anything like that this year, however. And I think as an aggregate, the amount of increased traffic is going to be negligible at best. It's no different than the traffic. I'm amazed. I'm absolutely amazed. Once we put in the parking lot for climbing Mount Caesar gets traffic. It's a very popular spot, thankfully.
Is any of that gonna be affected?
No, so far it really looks like, near as I can tell, that the two times really that when they're both being used the most really complement each other. You know, she's first thing in the morning, last thing during the day.
Yeah.
No weekends. They're in the middle of the day and on weekends. So it's pretty cool. And our police department, you may notice, sits here pretty routinely already, is prepared to sit here a little more and just remind people, just remind folks, everybody's got to be cool and be good to each other. When you leave the cemetery road here, I'll call it, there's plenty of sight lines for both pedestrians and the traffic, not a problem. And again, it gets used an awful lot by Mount Caesar climbers as it is.
Yeah.
I may be ahead of myself, Rick, but the road that comes down through the cemetery,
Mhm.
what are the plans for improving that and bringing that up to snuff? Because that is pretty bumpy, pitted all the way down.
The part that we're using, actually, we feel reasonably good about, save some washout damage. And it's just gonna get maintained a little bit better, just like all these roads were getting a little bit more attention when the Carpenter Home was up. And now they'll get a little bit more attention than they got before. We are in the middle of a cemetery road improvement, which sounds odd, but if you go to, it's Oak Hill. Oak Hill's pretty nice these days. If you're really visiting.
Question, Mike, drop off and pickups, how do you conceive of that? Because like Mount Caesar, you know, they line up.
Well, we're
They
getting
all
into-
get off at the same time. Are you gonna have that? Are you gonna have a provider there taking the kids out of the car? Are they gonna have to park?
But we're getting into site plan issues. Those are all site plan issues. He's in here preliminarily for a consultation with the planning board to decide whether we think that they need site plan and a public hearing and all that business there. And if they do, then all those issues should come up with the site plan. Right now, you know, we're just discussing what they want to do up there. It sounds like they'd like to expand or are going to expand somewhat in the future there, you know, knock down walls, get some more kids can come up there, and traffic issues can be discussed then. Looking at it from my perspective, it's on a government piece of property. Town of Swansea owns the property, but I don't think it falls under governmental use under the 674-54, I guess is what was cited in here, because it's the childcare, in my opinion, is not a governmental use. You know, it might be a nonprofit, but it's not a governmental use. It doesn't fall into that category of like town hall, governmental use, that type of thing.
And we are not,
Yeah,
and
no.
to your point, you're quite correct. I mean, we are not, what you're showing, we have no management, hiring, firing. That's all her.
You're just property owner.
We're
and
just
that's it.
landlords. So to bolster your point, plus they've got questions. They said, I've got no problem coming back.
Well, if it doesn't fall under 674-54, then they're required to have a public hearing anyway.
Well,
under that
the only
statute.
thing I would draw your attention to is it actually says that that's not necessarily true. If back to the analog of this use versus that use, if they're
Oh,
close
yeah,
enough.
that, I think that point was that this use is not different from the prior use.
Right.
That's what you meant right there, that point
Right.
there, but I'm citing from the RSA, you know, the rules that we go by, and let me just find it in here, let me just find it
Yeah, that's
first,
cool.
maybe I'm wrong here. But it's under you know, your 674-54. It says, under 2A, any use, construction, or development of land occurring on governmentally owned or occupied land, but which is not a governmental use, as defined in paragraph 1, shall be fully subject to local land use regulations, and which would mean a public hearing.
Right, and your regulation says, where there is any doubt as to whether or not a project requires site plan review, the affected party should request a determination from the board, which I'm not doing. In an effort to clarify that constitutes a change of use or sufficient magnitude or impact to trigger planning board action if a change of use expansion involves significant impact in terms of traffic and circulation, parking, lighting, for example. And then we go back to the analog change.
Yeah.
So that, to me, as an applicant, this is one of the reasons I'm doing this exercise, is because we have to explain to applicants every day what we're doing. So I'm also learning while I'm trying to convince you. So that's what I'm seeing, is I'm seeing that you guys have the opportunity. You go, yeah, it's close enough to what it was before.
Yeah, we have two different points here.
Okay.
That point there is open to any applicant that comes before the board, whether they're on town-owned property or right next door or whatever. They can
Correct.
ask the planning board, do we really need to have a site plan and all that? The planning board could say yes or no, or whatever they want.
Mhm.
The other point I'm making is that it's not a governmental use under the 674,
Right.
which again requires that it have a public hearing. Okay, that requirement is there. You can't fall under 674-54, I guess it is. Can't fall underneath that. So then again, yeah, it reverts back to the board whether the board wants to require a public hearing or not.
Right.
But those are the two separate points. I don't know if I explained it
Okay.
properly, but those are the 2 points. The one point is it can't come in, I don't think anyways, under 674-54
Yeah. Okay.
because it is not a governmental use.
Okay.
Next one is whether the board wants to have a site plan here or not. That's a board decision, as you have brought up. And again, let's talk about that.
So then this would be treated as any other private business out of somebody's house, even though they're renting the.
That's correct. Yeah, it doesn't matter, yeah, who owns the property. The town owns property here, but it doesn't really matter. It's whether we think there's enough, we'll say disruption or enough traffic change or
Any other things?
alterations or any of the stuff that we usually take a look at. And generally, the board has just erred on the, I don't know,
With caution.
cautious side there by requiring public hearing for the school or for anybody else coming in here, just so that anybody around can come in and have their say about it. You know, members of the public, aren't too many neighbors there, but it's a town-owned piece of property, and
People might have
actually,
something to say.
people from the town might want to just address it or hear something going on about it. I would say public hearing, but that's up to the board. Jane, you had something? to
I
say?
think you're right too. I was just thinking, the neighbors in the cemetery, those who are there, aren't going to say anything, but a lot of people have relatives in there, and this is going to impact the use of the road that they've always used. I think that the traffic is the main thing, because like you mentioned, Mount Caesar, that is just a horrific example. And Alice is not gonna have that many people there, but you will have people who come early and line up to get their kids. People do that. Yeah, I don't know why. I usually was late.
The nice thing that we do have, well, we're not gonna talk about that, but we do have plenty of stacking as opposed to some of these other places. We don't have 130 kids either. She's got 20 kids right now.
No, but if each parent came, you know, if you got a backlog of people waiting, or if you had a function and they all wanted to come and everyone.
I rent here for those things. I rent here for those things. I do it for Christmas, like we have our family Christmas party
Yeah, there you go.
here.
So is the consensus of the board that we would like to have a regular public hearing and a site plan like we normally do on things, and I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Because of the proximity to the school.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's another good point.
I think it's a great project, but yes, it's safety concerns I have in my mind, so I want to get those answers, like those questions, so. There may be other things that the rest of the board members come up with, so, yeah, I don't think the site plan is.
All right, so I would ask the board this, then, can I have a couple of months, or do you want me to come back in a month with worst case scenario?
Let's get the vote out of the way. Do we want to have a public hearing? I mean, and
I second.
A motion by Richard Lane that they come in with a site plan and a full public hearing, seconded by Brandon. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that's out of the way. So I guess, I don't know, does it matter to the board if they come back in a month or 6 months or 2 months?
Whenever you're ready.
They have 60 days with which to come back.
But they have not filed a application yet, have they?
Not for site
Go
plan.
ahead.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
kind of work through it from what I read. We have 60 days from what we decided that you're going to have to come back. And there's another addition of 30 days for some stipulation, and I can't remember what it is.
I think
So total 90.
yeah, but you're confusing that with after we accept an application, there's something actually on the, a time limit on the board for making a decision. He's here for conceptual, and we just voted whether or not he should have a site plan review, a full site plan review, but we haven't accepted the application. So there's nothing really, no clock that I can see starting up yet. So if they want a month or 6 months, I don't see that there'd be any objection to it, unless there's something missing there in the RSA's.
Yeah, I would say when they're ready to come forward, they come forward.
I will do it in a timely fashion. You'll see us fairly quickly.
Yeah, that's, I think that's fine with the board. Nobody else has any objection. Anybody else have any comments for the applicant or for the site plan?
I'm happy.
Be a great use for the property.
Oh, yeah, I think it'd be good.
Okay, well, put this aside and we'll come back and take care of the other bit. Actually, I'm gonna take 2 parts, right? This is kind of part of the bit, right there. All right, so the multi-tenant. That's where we are now.
What is it that we're doing
We're all
now? And this is a multi-tenant for what, the same building here?
Same building.
No, if we required the board required a site plan and a public hearing on the site plan,
Yeah, I thought it'd be odd.
then that's part of it. That is part of the multi, if you use it as a multi-tenant or not, because it has not had a site plan approved on it yet
Okay.
that we know of, so.
Okay. I'll see you a lot quicker than that then.
Okay. And you'll see us for what? For the site plan, right?
Yeah,
Back
get that
on
done.
first. Yeah, and that can come in as, multi-tenant, but it's gotta have a site plan.
We'll get that done.
Okay,
All right.
go ahead.
With that site plan, does the board offer things that we would like to see included perhaps?
This is the time to do it. Yeah,
This is time to do it now.
just so that they know. Yeah.
We covered the road concern. The other thing I'm curious about is if we're going to be taking kids to the library from there, establishing some sort of a crosswalk and lighting, as you would see like up on Keene State, when they go across, there's a flashing light and traffic stops. I don't know if that's anything that can be done with the site plan or.
The state road though, right? Isn't that a state road there?
We have to have the state.
We have to petition the state for that. We can suggest that they do it, but they don't have to do it if they don't want to do it.
I'm just thinking child safety.
Yep.
And the other thing was,
I can tell you now, I agree, but they couldn't get it for the school. For the kids, Wheeler.
For where?
by the school.
But because they have a crosswalk there. right?
There's a lot of crosswalks. actually.
There is a crosswalk.
There
over
is a
there.
crosswalk there eventually, but there's no enforcement, so everybody just kind of scatters about. So we'll use what's there and in place. But as far as lights, I'm talking about lights, they couldn't get lights or anything like that, and we tried that. whole
Yeah.
thing. So, but I can ask.
What is there, why do you think they did not do lights? Why? Why is it so
Money.
hard to get,
I don't know.
It all boils down to
Lighting
money.
well, it can't be that expensive, but it's well worth it.
I will put you on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
the-
I'll get on.
You just got yourself a job. See how that works? You know how that works.
well, the board can write a letter and request that when this comes up because of that, if we have a reason for it.
Well, I'll confess. I almost slipped Alice in the crosswalk at the Rotary today.
You did, clip me.
I
I waved you.
I didn't even see you. She
I didn't
was-
hear you say that. That's not on the record that she didn't see another human being in
No,
a
she was starting
crosswalk.
out into the crosswalk, and it's really funny because I went on home and I thought, my God, you know, those crosswalks are not easily seen when you're going into the rotary and you're concentrating on who's coming which way in the rotary.
Lights to the
Before-
crosswalk, please.
And I thought, we should have those little things about that tall that light up when somebody steps into the crosswalk.
That's the reason that of all the areas in town where we enforce the sign stuff the most, it's always rotaries, and that's why, because there's already too much to look at now. We don't need to add signs to it.
No comment.
I was paying attention to the name. I wasn't gonna walk into that.
So the crosswalk situation, we've got, is there any other?
Yep. Anything else from the board that,
Other than playing on, how you're
Stacking,
gonna stack them and
Yeah.
stuff.
we can talk about that a little bit.
okay, then you got some work cut out for you or
Okay.
you have work cut out for you or?
Oh, I've
both
got
of
plenty
you?
of work cut out.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be a worthwhile project. I think.
Yep.
I hope so.
Okay,
Okay, thank you, Mike.
thank you guys, appreciate your time.
You're welcome. That brings us to item C, which is the master plan adoption. The master plan update is ready for adoption as provided by RSA 6744. The master plan is adopted by the planning board after a duly noticed public hearing, which is this. And I will open the public hearing officially this time, probably in the proper spot. I was supposed to. So now the public hearing is open for adoption of the master plan update, which is what we had been working on for a while there, for several months back. And I'm on and on. I've got a whole copy of it right here that Sarah gave me. And if anyone wants to read it before the meeting is over. have at it. But we've been through the update to the master plan, and I don't think there's anything else that anybody comes up with, is there, that needs to be in there or changed or whichever. And if not, there's no members from the public here either to comment on it.
There's no one else.
And there's nobody on Zoom. Thank you for running. I
Was
forget
there-
about.
Jane, was there any further comment from the commissioner, conservation?
They haven't told me to
Well,
say anything.
We're still going to meet with the Conservation Commission at
Right.
some point regarding our site plan review regulations. We're going over those, so they'll be discussing stuff for that. We could discuss stuff for the master plan, because we aren't held to updating it every 5 years. We could update it next year again if we wanted to, if there's something we need to go in there. But right now, we're supposed to update it every 5 years. This is our deadline, so.
We should have
Yes.
let it
If
go
the-
for a few
yeah.
years or something.
And that's one of the planning board's main duties, is the master plan, to make sure that the town is developed properly. There's no premature development around, and it helps us set zoning regulations. So we're doing our due diligence, and if there's no other comments from the board or public, I'm going to close the public hearing. Then the public hearing is closed. Now we can deliberate on the update to the master plan. And if we're done deliberating, then we need a motion to,
I'll move that we adopt the master plan.
motion by Michael York to adopt the update to the master plan. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Brandon. Is there any further discussion? Then all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Those opposed? And good, we've done that. That just brings us to discussions, ongoing site plan review regulations, and any other business maybe desired to discuss. But last week we discussed some things. I think I wrote some notes down about it somewhere. Yeah, we discussed some stuff about our site plan review regulations, and actually just general stuff of reviewing the site plan. And I think we made a determination that we would probably have, and let me make sure if it's, we would tend to continue public hearings to the next meeting. Definitely if the Conservation Commission hasn't seen it yet. If they haven't met within their month and seen the site plan to comment on it, then we can still accept the application as complete. We can still open up the public hearing, discuss it, and then continue to the next meeting till we hear from the Conservation Commission. So I think we agreed on that last meeting there, and those are the notations, those things like that, I think we can put into our site plan review regulations or rules of procedure.
I spoke with the Conservation Commission about that at their last meeting. They do intend to come to the next planning board meeting to discuss the site plan regulations, but we discussed the possibility of Concom having a subcommittee to preview site plan applications so that they can determine the threshold that would warrant meeting the entire commission to review a site plan and provide you folks with comments.
That'll be interesting.
But they
So-
don't have volunteers yet, so
No,
it's not
no,
official.
yeah, well, so yeah, that, they could do that and get back to you
Mhm.
prior to a meeting. And if it was such a small thing that they had no comment or weren't gonna comment on it, then yeah, we could pass it in one meeting like we have been doing. We accept the application, we have public hearing, we have discussion down and do it. But yeah, that might work out for that. But until then, I guess we decide that we probably ought to be cautious on that, on just continuing. And there's another reason too. Let's see, Conservation Commission. The other reason was about, and I think we discussed it, was about the approval with conditions and conditional approval. So to wrap it back up, the conditional approval has conditions there that are administrative, something the planning board doesn't have to use any discretion on. They are permits and things like that. So according to the RSA's, those can be, the planning board can list those as conditions. And when those conditions are met through getting the permit or whatever administrative is done there, then the plat is considered finally approved and it's done without another public hearing. But according to the RSA's, any other conditions we put on there will say like, we want to see a longer fence on this perimeter of the property, or we want to see more certain kind of tree or whatever it happens to be on the plat there. Those conditions, actually, we've been supposed to bring the applicant back to the public for actually a compliance hearing. And we've done that in the past, but it amounts to a compliance hearing. So that if we say that's a condition for 5 parking spaces to be on this side rather than 6, then rather than approving it with that condition, they still have to come back for a public hearing. We have to notice a public hearing to see if they put it on the plat and they're going to have the 6 parking spaces or a 5 instead of the 6. So what I'm getting at is, to make a long story even longer, I guess. So what I'm getting at is that we probably should, if we have any other conditions, try and get them on the plat. Just continue the public hearing till the next meeting, let the applicant get it on the plat, submit a new plat to us that shows all out that we want the sign exactly here, not vaguely here or a set of stairs here or there, whatever, that it's on the plat. Then we can approve it and maybe leave the conditional approval that they'll need for permits and things like that as it is. So it'll be cleaner done. They'll have done their public hearings with us. We'll have done it. We can sign it, and when they get the permits and things, and that would be done. So I don't know if I've confused anybody or what, but that's what we're discussing. So
So you're saying that we can approve the site plan if all that's holding them up is permits from the state or wherever else. But if we require something or request something, that we're not to approve it, that they're to make those changes and then come back with a site plan review, and that's when we'll approve it or not approve
Yeah,
it with
we're
a public hearing.
discussing doing that. We can do it either way, but they're supposed to come back in for a public hearing to make sure that the conditions that we approved are going to be on that plat and are going to be there. Rather than having that, I think we got to just continue the public hearing until they got everything on there and everybody's satisfied with it, then approve it and be done with it like that. So,
The way that you're proposing we do it,
pardon me?
the way you are proposing we are doing it, should do it, is a cleaner way to do it.
Yeah, I think so. It's a cleaner way and it's less confusing because, we had that discussion months ago about conditional approval and approval with conditions. Beverly said it straight on it, right?
I remember.
And so did Sarah. So now maybe this is a way to address that. So we can have those 2 separate issues there and pretty much keep it that way. If the applicant wants the approval that night and they are willing to come back for another public hearing to show that, for whatever reason it is, the board can decide to do it and be done, or if it's gonna continue to 2 or 3 or 4 public hearings, they don't want to do that, we can discuss it then and just say, okay, then when you get those conditions there on the plat, come back, we'll have a public hearing approval, then it can be signed. But they can still move on with their project, you know, if something's holding it up that they can't do, whatever.
In most cases, you're only asking for a 2-week delay.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
It's not that long.
No, it isn't, and it just makes more sense to do it that way. I think we ought to probably add in, and either, probably just into our rules of procedure, the way we should try and do meetings like that.
I think that, as you're saying, when we have a large applicant or large project or something like that, it'd be to our benefit to take time from the original application, you know, and say we approved the applicant with conditions, but to take the time to review everything ourselves and make sure we understand everything, rather than, you know, just trying to, as you're saying, trying to bang it through one night,
Yeah,
you know, like Flatley, their project, you know, they spent what, 2.5 hours the first night.
mhm,
You know,
they
which
did, yeah.
is-
That was a long
Which is way too much, but,
Mhm.
but, you know, there was a lot there.
There was.
For us to digest it properly and, you know, try and understand what they want to do, and if there's any concerns, you know, in that 2.5 hour period, you know, you go home afterwards and, you know, you're still grinding it, and then you start popping up with things. You know, it'd be good to have something of that size or that nature for them to come back before we did a final.
It is, I agree, it's good practice to think about something, to not hastily approve it, Beverly, yes.
I just want to make a note that you guys have approved a number of site plans with a whole list of conditions,
Yeah,
and you don't see the finished plat. They don't come back. I mean,
Right.
and you don't even know if those conditions have been met unless Mike Jasmine tells you, you know, they've been met.
Yeah.
It seems to me that as a group, you'd be better serving the public if you wait, especially in a big project where there's a whole bunch of conditions. Those
Mhm.
conditions should be met before they get approval.
yeah, and I think that's what we ought to,
Right? I mean, because otherwise you don't even know
know.
if those conditions have been met.
That would be one of those conditions approved with conditions. You know, we approved the application, but we're putting the conditions on afterwards, you know, as in the pitch roof thing over here on Route 10. You know, to be sure that they come back with that signed off, showing us that that's what the final
Yeah.
project is going to look like.
I should say, the planning board in Chesterfield, for example, they don't approve anything until the plat is so complete that it's ready to be signed by them. And they actually take those drawings and they sign it at their meeting.
Mhm.
So they have to be that complete.
Mhm.
I think you're giving a lot of leeway when you list 10 or 12 conditions that you're not sure have been met.
Yeah, I agree, yeah, and
It's-
we've been, okay, we haven't been caught by it, and, you know, we've got a good planning department, you know,
You've been
and that
you've been
they've,
safe so far.
yeah, we have, but we
But-
could,
Well,
right?
so we could, especially when the plan is extremely busy right now.
And like Beverly was saying, that the application is so complete, or the drawing of the plat is so complete, whereby it doesn't list, we'll say, approximate location of stairs or approximate location
No,
of this or
they
that.
want it
If,
specific.
if we approve it like that, then, and they want to put it anywhere in there,
Yeah,
then they
right.
got us, you know, we,
That's not fair.
no, but it's easy to approve something like that and not even think about it, so. If we extend the meetings, you know, to at least 2 public hearings, then it gives us a chance to go home, think about it for 2 weeks, and then come back. So I think we ought to do that. Let's see, what else do we have from last week there? That was about it, yeah. Yeah, just a question of, I haven't researched it in our zoning and stuff like that, but, you know, just looking at the site plan that Mike brought in there. Do we have anything in our regulations that you have read, Sarah, that says that the parking has to be on the plat? I mean, it has to be owned by the plat. I don't recall that we have that on there, you know, like someone could get permission from the neighbor to park vehicles on the, on none of
That's a
these
good
properties.
question. We do address parking, but I don't know if it
We do.
specifies that it needs to be
I
on
don't
the
think
same
it does.
parcel.
I don't think it does. But it might, like I said, I haven't researched it, but it just made me think when Mike was presenting his, site plan up there.
Who owns it?
Well, it doesn't matter who owns it.
Or
I'm
you're
just saying
in
that
general,
if
coming
a
from
guy wants to
something
put
like
in
that.
a business there and he doesn't have enough parking, but yet the guy across the street or neighbor, or whatever, says, yeah, you can park those vehicles here, but he doesn't own the property. Can we approve that or not? He has enough parking, but not on his own parcel, but it might not say it in the regulations that the parking has to be on the plat and not on somebody else's land. So we
That
have-
was one of the
So
reasons I raised that question about parking. Because he's talking about parking on town
Yeah,
property.
yeah, that's what
And
I
that's
got.
gotta be part of the site plan review of where you're gonna allow parking to
does.
be, and whether he has
Yeah.
permission to do that.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I was thinking
That's
too.
why I
I
raised
said
the
the same
question.
thing. Okay, so we're thinking
One
along
of
the
the
same
things you
lines.
can, one of the things you can do to cover yourself is require a restrictive covenant to be filed against that piece of property, saying that I have the right to have my customers park 5 cars on your property. And that way it gets recorded against the deed.
Yeah, if it's
to-
recorded, that's one thing. That's right.
Yeah.
And that'd get it beyond it. And now, of course, the planning board at the site plan or at the public hearing can, decide to let I suppose, an applicant, if it doesn't say that we can't do it in our own regulations, I suppose we could do it with the way you said.
So if you were to do it that way, my question would be, what happens if that person, the neighbor said, oh yeah, okay, here's the signed piece of paper saying you're able to do that, and then 5 years down the road, he sells that piece of
It's
property.
gotta be in recordable
And then-
form. It's gotta be in recordable form, recorded where the deeds are recorded, and filed against the property granting the.
And it'd basically be an easement, I would guess.
Yes,
It'd
basically
be
it
filed
is.
as an easement, and that's, of
Yeah.
course, is in the registry of deeds, so easement is good for the property no matter who owns it. It stays with the property.
And it can be found without having to go through the records of the planning board or the zoning board or
Yeah.
whatever.
But we might want to think about looking through our regulations and put something in there that says the parking has to be on the plat that they
That's
own.
just what I was gonna suggest,
Yeah.
that we do that.
So before it comes in front of us for a little problem there. And anybody been reading through the site plan review regularly? Everybody has a copy of the site plan regs, right? So as we, meetings, at the end of the meetings like we're doing here, we can just go through stuff that anybody came up with in the site plan regs and there, I have a few things in here that when we get to discuss them, that change them around, there are a few repetitive things in there. There are a few contradictory. There's one in here that it says that the planning board may, the planning board may require a landscape plan. And then there are like 2 or 3 other places in the site plan regs that says that the applicant shall submit a site plan, a landscape plan. So we're contradicting ourselves in our own regulations there. So we'll have to clean that up a little bit. All things like that. Anything else or discussions on any stuff or any topics of RSAs? or
Oh,
what you do?
in, not in the site plan thing, could I move, are we moving off of that?
Oh, we can move off on back to it, whatever. This is our discussion period.
Flat Roof Mill Road, that's town operated or it owns, correct?
As far as I know, I think it is. Oh, a flat roof is a state?
Flat roof itself above state road.
Oh, are they?
South
And-
Road is.
All the way
South
through from 12 over to 32, that's called state.
Oh.
That's unfortunate, because this past weekend, I was attending Little League games for my grandson. And there is no speed control at all through that section. And there are kids, they foul ball goes across the road. Kids are, going after it, not even thinking about what's going on. And whether or not we can, again, send a letter. I
We
guess,
can, yeah, we can petition the state to do that.
requesting, that they have some sort of flashing deal down to 20 miles an hour or something like that through that section during games that they're being played.
Right, there is no signs posted, but state law says that if you're in a residential area, which that is, the state law says 30 miles an hour. We may want to ask in that area, like he's saying, to have it reduced to 20. I don't know.
And just through
Yeah,
that
they may or
section.
may not.
Best way to do is get the selectmen's hand so they can go to Ms. Rhodes, rep from town, and have her contact the highway department, because she's done that for one other place, over here on Holbrook.
Did it work?
Yeah. Basically.
Whereabouts on Holbrook? Did they
Well, you
reduce
remember-
the speed?
Yeah, when you go by the home, the senior housing there,
Mhm.
there's a stretch that goes from 30 to 35 to 30. And they want to take that 35 out. And the head of the highway department, I forget his name now, has said that he would not raise through there, but he would actually want to cut it down to south to
Yeah,
30.
it seemed to me a can of spray paint would take care of that problem, wouldn't it?
Of course, if it's posted 30, 35, they're probably doing 45, 50.
Well,
You know
right,
what might
yeah.
work? One of those portable blinking things that says the speed limit, then your
Yeah,
speed is.
Yeah,
See, the funny thing is that I don't know exactly where it starts, but part of it's town road, part of it's state road, then there's a town.
But
Are you going over?
Oh.
Route 63 is a state road too, and the Chesterfield police put up those portable, we're talking about the portable
Right,
sign that
and you
blinks.
still gotta have the state's approval to do it though. on state
Well, that
road.
may be the case, but you could ask our police department to get approval to do it, especially if it's an issue of safety for children.
Yeah, they'd have to go to the selectmen to get the money for it.
They have one, don't
Yeah,
doesn't
don't they
Swansea
have
have
one? Yeah,
one? Just gotta get
I've seen
permission
one
to use
around
it.
town other times. I wonder if they own
Is that a
that.
state one or is it a town?
I don't know, but it'd be
I
something
don't
to
know
look
that
into,
either.
because yeah, it could be
Give
put
the
in
chief
different
a call and
areas.
ask him.
Hmm. Could be put different
The
spaces.
chief, by the way, is a very adamant fellow. I mean, you can talk to him, he'll walk around and talk to me. It'll be fine.
Ask him next time you talk to
If
him.
I see him, I will ask him.
One little bit of business.
Yes.
I printed out those packets for everybody that we discussed at the last meeting, so
Let's pass them out right now.
if you'd like
Pass them
one.
down that way.
I have one.
You have one?
I have
Okay, Richard, do you have one?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It's actually in my book already.
I picked up mine. on
Recycle.
last week. Recycle. Okay, good. So we have some extra.
Thank you.
We need to, for Michael Day isn't here, and the other, couple of the other members aren't here that don't have those. So we'll save those to the next meeting. All right, anything else under discussion? If not, I guess we got some stuff to think about and a motion for adjournment would be in order. Motion by Michael York for adjournment. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Brandon. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And we are officially adjourned.
Anybody's.